Welcome, everybody. Simon Rosenberg, Hopium Chronicles. We're here with a joyous and festive and wonderful discussion. It's been a hard election, but while some things didn't go so well, there are other things that went really well for us. And one of the great bright spots in this election is what happened in North Carolina. And joining me today is our dear friend, Anderson Clayton. Anderson, welcome.
Hello, BM community. Thank you all so much for having me, and thank you, Simon. And just I'm honored to be here.
Well, listen, let's talk. Let's just get right into it. You had some big news just last night, this morning. Why don't you give us our community made a major investment, and we'll get into that with you. Josh Stein and, big win statewide. But you, in what I'm beginning to now think is that, we forestalled the red wave in 2022. And we forestalled it again in many places around the country. I mean, it did not wash across the whole country evenly. And in North Carolina, it was really one of our sort of biggest success stories of the cycle. And so lay out for us just exactly what happened, and then let's talk about why afterwards.
Well, first and foremost, just thank everyone here. North Carolina would not be a bright spot and what folks are calling us right now that we defied a national red wave without the folks on this community. I like watching this right now, the people that have given their time, their energy, not just their money, because I'll be honest, I met so many of you all throughout North Carolina this year. Anytime I would meet someone from this community, I would send Simon a little selfie of us together because I was like, you need to understand that your impact is not just through dollars, but it's also through what we're seeing right now on the ground. And North Carolina, because of that, was able to be the only swing state besides Wisconsin that swung to the right the least. The second swing state that swung to the right the least, even though from the national apparatus, we had the least amount of funding of all the battleground states. And I think it is incredible to be able to show where North Carolina held its ground, but also even pushed back on what the national apparatus looked like. And so, for the first time in 12 years in our state's history, we have the top four offices on our Council of State. We have got a good Democratic governor in Josh Stein. We are going to have a great lieutenant governor in Senator Rachel Hunt, who is moving up from our state Senate to come to our lieutenant governor's office. So that way, if we've got a Democratic governor that needs to leave the country or leave the state for some reason, we have the ability to hold power as the Democratic Party. We've also got a Democratic Attorney General with Jeff Jackson, who's coming back down from Congress for us. And then we were also able to keep Secretary of State Elaine Marshall in her office this year, too. And that's just the top four of those offices. We also managed to eke out another win with public instruction this year. So our superintendent of public instruction, for those of you that were paying attention to that race with Michelle Morrow and Mo Green kicked Michelle Morrow's ass, made sure that she was going to be nowhere near an $11 billion budget for public education in North Carolina. And that is thanks to all of the folks on this call right now. And so we sit right now, instead of being at a 6-4 minority like we currently are on the Council of State, we are going to hold power at a 5-5 split right now. The most of those offices that we have held in a long time as the Democratic Party. And then along with that, we are giving our good old Democratic Governor Josh Stein veto power. We broke a Republican supermajority last Tuesday night. And we had not only holding seats like, Beth Helfrich and HD 98 right out of Mecklenburg County, but we also had people like Brian Kahn, Dante Pittman, who won in Granville County, and places like Wilson County, who were rural counties, which we talked a lot about this year.
Yeah.
And then we also got to hold the line with Lindsay Prather, who is an R+2 district that this party managed to hold on to. And so we broke a Republican supermajority by one vote, and we are going to hold down that power in North Carolina this year. And that is thanks to all of you.
And last night we got word. What's the latest on the Supreme Court race?
So we are now up, as of literally 3 minutes ago, we now have 625 votes for Justice Allison Riggs. On election night, she was down by almost 10,000 votes. And because of the great process of counting every single ballot and making sure that we enfranchise as many people as humanly possible, Justice Allison Riggs is hopefully going to keep her seat on the bench. We're going to go through a recount, and we're probably going to enter into litigation after that, to be real with you. But North Carolina Democrats are prepared. We have lawyers that are already on top of it, and we fully expect to protect this win that we're going to have on the Supreme Court, because this is one of the first times that we've won a Supreme Court race with our races being partisan.
So talk, Anderson, just reflect for a moment. And I know you're in the midst of it because counting is still going on. And there's also all sorts of shenanigans beginning to break out in the state. But talk back, think back over the last 2 years, right? You became party chair almost 2 years ago. You ran kind of a quixotic race, right, to sort of challenge the establishment to, work harder and fight harder all in every county across the state to leave no stone unturned. I mean, to think back now, I know it's raw and fresh, but are you happy with what happened in terms of just what the party did? I mean, you raised huge amounts of money, you implemented a new strategy. I mean, part of the reasons we invested in you and got behind you is A, I thought with Mark Robinson and the extremists running statewide, that more would be possible for us in North Carolina this year. But because also I'm a believer in the party. I believe in the party. I believe in strong parties, state parties. I believe in strong national parties. I've learned from all of my years of doing this that on the ground organizing, day-to-day messaging, as you've done, it really matters. And so you built a strong party. Just reflect back on that a little bit for us today.
I mean, I think it's been amazing. And if you had asked me 2 years ago, Anderson, what would a good night in North Carolina look like on, 2024 or in 2024 for you? I would have said keeping a governor's seat, breaking a Republican supermajority, and that a presidential would have been a nice to have. And I'll be honest with y'all, like my heart hurts so badly after last Tuesday and what we saw. But I know that it is possible for us not to run away from our values, to dig into our party and to dig deeper into what people actually want to see out of leadership right now. And I think that a lot of what we're finding and a lot of what we found over the last 2 years is that year round organizing works. It is a model that if we are in communities consistently and that we're not just picking up and leaving them, but that we have sustained infrastructure in them, it matters. The places where we had that, places like Granville County and Wilson, we were able to flip house seats in them. And the ability for a county party to be well organized, but also well resourced has been one of the biggest takeaways that I've had from this election cycle, because I know that building up our party has got to come from the grassroots up. And so what we did this year through funding and resources from folks like this community, but also just everywhere else across the country, was starting a year-round organizing program. And we are going to be able right now, we are maintaining that staff and keeping on 6 year-round organizers, a organizing director, and a training director, so that we are consistently moving in communities to make sure that we're reaching out, we're organizing around issues, but also around elections that are coming up. We're going to have municipals in 2025. And I know a lot of people may not want to think about elections right now, but that's exactly what we're in. We're in an election year again. And we're going to keep fighting it out, whether or not that we have the majorities where we need to, because it's about putting up a fight. And I know a lot of people across North Carolina this year put up a fight and didn't expect to win it. And we're looking at right now the results of people digging in and finding that resilience that we need to keep going.
And what are the municipal races? Is it all the big cities in 2025? I mean, lay out a little bit for us about that.
Yeah, so we're looking at places. We want to take the top 25 cities for population in North Carolina and make sure that they have Democratic mayors and Democratic city councils. And right now, places like Rocky Mount, where you have in Nash County, that's a majority minority city in that county, does not have a Democratic mayor sitting in it right now. You've got places like Greenville and Pitt County that do not, majority minority city again, that do not have a Democratic mayor sitting in that seat right now. And we want to make sure that communities that should be represented by our party are. And we're going to go on an aggressive attack this year to make sure we're running our Main Street 2025 program so that we can help make sure the local offices and that the bench can be built for our state legislature too. We're already recruiting for state legislator though, or state legislative seats as well. We had just had 3 people last week sign up to run for office in 2026. And so our training department, as we keep Christy on with us this year, she is going to be running a training program for our candidates, making sure that people have the resources from the party that they need to feel confident about running for office, about raising money, about making connections in their communities, and also where they should go to start right now.
Well, and I think for folks watching, I mean, what part of what Anderson is describing, and Jane Klebb talked about this as well. When Jane Klebb became party chair in Nebraska 10 years ago, there were 500 elected Democrats in the state. There are now 900. And what happens is that the places where we've gone through the biggest collapse in many ways since I've been in this business, which have been Florida and Texas, what happens is the reapportionment, the redistricting denies the extreme gerrymandering, denies the ability of Democrats to develop a bench and a farm team. And so what happens oftentimes is we have candidates who run in Texas and Florida who just aren't ready, but they're the only ones that are there. And because there isn't just a big pool of folks. And so this issue of long-term party building, the way that we grew in Arizona, the way that we grew in Georgia, the way that we grew in Nebraska, where we had a very good election cycle, and what Ben's been doing in Wisconsin, this building of the bench and the farm team is actually the investments that allow us to win in 6, 8, and 10 years. And without it, we can go into a downward spiral. We can go into a vicious cycle instead of a virtuous cycle. And what Anderson's talking about is the building of a virtuous cycle in North Carolina, right? Where we're investing forward, we build powerful candidates who can then grow and learn and then run in 4 or 6 years to the next level. And without that kind of infrastructure, it's incredibly difficult to win the statewide races when we need to. And so even a guy like Jeff Jackson, right? He was a member of Congress. And you had people moving up the chain, right? In order, and that's why the investment in these municipal elections in 2025 are so critical. And so Anderson, great. I think what's going to be so important in this chairs race, we're going to have a spirited chairs race with some of our dear friends in coming up now, Ken Martin and Ben Wickler, and now it looks like Martin O'Malley. There's going to be a really, I think, important opportunity for us to have a discussion about the places that have won the year-round organizing model, the need to take this national, the need to, frankly, take some of the $700 million that was spent on Future Forward and turn that into permanent organizing and permanent state parties. There's been a bias in the national donor community against funding state parties, by the way. And one of the things I'm really proud of at Hopium is that we went in and proved to people that maybe didn't really know or hadn't invested in state parties before, what kind of return you can get by investing in state parties. And so I hope that we can help you, Anderson, and Ben, and Ken Martin, and others really make this case in the coming months about the centrality of state parties to the future of the center left here in the US.
I mean, I'll be honest. I told Simon before we started this, to be real with y'all that are watching. My funding came from this community. Like, you all raised us $1 million this year, and if you all don't think that that is why North Carolina is a bright spot last Tuesday, the money went to the places where it needed to go. We were able to give every council of state candidate $15,000 each to help them get up on digital ads at the last like 3 weeks of the campaign that were really helpful, especially to people like Elaine Marshall, who those down ballot races in North Carolina typically do not receive that type of funding. And it's something where, we were able to have a huge impact on races that are now going to be able to be in our category going forward. And we're going to maintain them. And I just, there is not a price tag that you could put on that in my mind for the amount of trust and the amount of just help that y'all gave to us this year. And so I'm just grateful. And I come to you all like that too. And I hope that you all at least still feel valued in this and like the fight's not lost, and it shouldn't be, because I know that right now we could all lay down and just roll over if we wanted to. And I'm like, that's not what Democrats, and that's not especially what rural Democrats do, in my opinion. And so I'm hoping that y'all are ready to get back involved with us and active with us.
Can I just make a point about that, Anderson? Is that it's pretty clear now when people are wondering, did all my work matter? Did the money that I give matter? Because we didn't have the election we wanted to have. Look at the success we had in North Carolina. Look at the winning now, these House races that we flipped. I mean, the Hopium community right now, of the 7 open seat and challenger House races that we have flipped in the House for the US House, we played major roles in 6 of them out of the 7 that flipped this election cycle. Because I'm counting now Derek Tran, who's now up by like 58 votes, right? If you don't think that your money and your work mattered to help us win in, these Senate races that we won, in the battleground states where Harris lost, in North Carolina where we overperformed expectations down ballot, where we won these brutal and competitive House races, I come away thinking again that the reason that we forestalled the red wave in so many places was because of all of you, and because of
Yeah.
the money that people gave, the volunteerism that happened. I mean, we stood strong. We stood muscular. The Democratic Party is an unbelievably strong enterprise right now, all across the country, resilient, successful, right, against extraordinary odds and against the loudest right-wing noise machine that the country has ever seen. And so I come away from this election increasingly optimistic. I know I don't really feel that, but I mean in my heart, but in my head, right? I'm starting to sift through all of this data and these late wins that we've been getting. And I feel like, hey guys, like we worked our asses off this cycle and we have a lot of wins to look to point to show the power of the Democratic grassroots, this new muscular power that we all have. And I just want you to all know that we gave Anderson the final tally, $1.1 million into North Carolina, over 10,000 individual contributions into the North Carolina Democratic Party just from our small community. I mean, we not only were the largest outside, non-big party investor in North Carolina, we are the largest investor in Nebraska. We are the largest investor in Arizona this cycle, where we had, one Ruben Gallegos race. We were one of the largest investor in these battleground House races that ended up, we're going to end up at within a seat or two, it looks like, or three in the House. Incredibly important strategic investments this community made that really made a difference.
And I think it's important to echo what Simon just said because you all chose the right place to give your money to. And that's something that should be shown from the fact that North Carolina should not have broken a Republican supermajority last Tuesday. We had maps that were drawn, hand drawn by Republicans to have their own districts in. Lindsey Prather kept an R+2 district. And that was because we got to make investments in her race in a place where no one would have chosen to do so, honestly, looking at a presidential map and looking at data. And you all gave us that chance to make sure that we took a chance on her. And I think that that is something that all of you should feel so proud of. The reason why, too, North Carolina is the only state in the country right now that we have two potential red to blue Senate flips in one in 26, one in 28. If we take back our courts like we are expected to now that Justice Allison Riggs is going to keep her seat on this bench, we hope, and making sure that recount gets solidified. But we take back our courts by 2028 and we give back 3 additional House of Representative seats, potentially 4, depending on what 2030 reapportionment is going to look like for us too, because North Carolina's growing and we're taking as much of that electoral college vote as we can possibly get. And so you all laid the foundation for what we're going to be able to do in 28 and 24, or in 2030, I mean, and going into heated election years to come as well at the federal level. And so I talk a lot about the state of North Carolina because I'll be real with y'all. I care about my backyard and where I'm living. But if you think that this did not matter for a federal landscape of things, you would be wrong. North Carolina is the road back to Congress, in my personal opinion.
Okay, my friend, I could talk to you forever. I mean, I want to bring you back in a few weeks, a few months when things settle to talk about young people, the youth vote. I want to let you go. I know you're busy today. You're right in the middle of all sorts of incredible stuff going on right now. But I'm really proud of you. I mean, we met. I know you called me. I think you called me in November or October last year and said, Simon, I need your help. And I'm so, I can tell, I talk about this. I've been doing this a long time, and I've met every major leader of our party over the last 30 to 40 years. And I just want to say that, when I met Anderson the first time, I knew she was going to be a leader. I knew she was going to be successful. You could just feel it. And as somebody, Anderson, who's no longer a 25-year-old or 26-year-old, you're now a national leader of the Democratic Party. And I'm unbelievably proud of you. It's been a great partnership because we achieved things that I knew were possible, but only through the kind of strategic work that you did, the grit that you showed, the unbelievable passion that you brought every day to the fight. And just, it's been great to be in this fight with you over the
Yeah.
last year.
Simon Rosenberg, you're making me emotional. um, but also, thank you. There were a lot of people who said that they wanted to help a young person in a role like this. They wanted to fund a young person in a role like this. And only one of those people really met me where I thought that they had talked enough about it. And you were fantastic this year. And I just can't thank you enough for helping out young folks and making sure that we had what we needed.
Okay, girl, as my daughter is at USC and what their motto is fight on, and we have to keep fighting on. Thanks so much,
Amen.
Anderson. See you later.